Please welcome the President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, Joel R. Johnson.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so good to see you all back here at the second day of Capitol Hill Ocean Week. We are absolutely delighted about the progress and the conversations that are going on all around Washington, D.C. and out there in the virtual world with all of our attendees. We saw an incredible lineup of diverse speakers yesterday, providing inspiration, real challenging talk, as well as creating an urgent call to action for all of us. For all those folks online, you probably couldn't see it last night, but this space, this whole auditorium was full of a wide variety of voices, especially a lot of youth voices, as we've had one of the largest contingents of young adults here at this Capitol Hill Ocean Week. So yesterday we heard from leaders from all walks of life share that they are meeting the urgent challenges of our ocean, coasts, and Great Lakes. Key to those conversations yesterday, we heard of servant leadership, strengthening coalitions by increasing diversity and inclusion, centering people in our collective movement to improve the health of our waters. And to cap it off, you heard the very exciting announcement about the new Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary in New York, and it's the first in New York, but not the last, that continues to build on a legacy of protection of marine heritage and culture. So as you explore the plenaries and the virtual sessions that are going to go on today, we invite you to post your thoughts and your perspectives, of course, on social media with the hashtag CHOW 2024. Yesterday, we actually were trending on X because of your posts, so thank you so much for that. So today we will continue to explore new pathways to deepening our knowledge and understanding of the ocean. We have exciting new national strategies to talk about today and a great lineup of speakers to share it. They're all game changers, and these strategies are game changers for the way we're going to do our work. We're going to be talking about marine eDNA and many more incredible ideas that are changing the direction, providing hope for a sustainable future. All right, so let's get started with this morning's events. I'd like to kick things off with a keynote discussion with two exemplars of leadership for our oceans. Each one has crafted powerful visions for how we will address the urgent challenges that we face, and each of these leaders have initiated bold initiatives to unleash the people power we need to bring the solutions to bear. Dr. Richard Spinrad is the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator. As the leader of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's 12,000-person workforce, Dr. Spinrad provides strategic direction for NOAA's products and services to address this climate crisis, fosters environmental sustainability and economic development, and focuses on infusing equity into all aspects of the agency's work and workforce. As an internationally recognized leader with an experience in academia and the private sector, Dr. Spinrad also served as NOAA's chief scientist and led NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research and the National Ocean Service. Prior to joining NOAA, Dr. Spinrad held leadership positions in the U.S. Office of Naval Research and was oceanographer of the Navy. Dr. Enrique Sala, a former university professor turned full-time conservationist and National Geographic Explorer in residence, founded and led Pristine Seas. This incredible project combines exploration, research, and media to inspire global leaders to protect the very last wild places in the ocean. The project has helped create an astounding, and I just got to make this point, an astounding 27 marine reserves, covering more than 6.6 million square miles of ocean. Pristine Seas preserves marine wonders while boosting food supply, providing economic benefits, and enhancing climate resilience. In 2023, Pristine Seas launched a bold conservation effort in the little-known areas of the tropical Pacific Ocean. So, Dr. Sala has been honored, naturally, with numerous awards, including becoming a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. But last night, or excuse me, not last night, the night before, he accepted the Conservation Innovation Award on behalf of the National Geographic Pristine Seas at the annual Ocean Awards Gala here in Washington, D.C. So please welcome NOAA Administrator Dr. Rick Spinrad and the National Geographic Explorer in Residence, Dr. Enrique Sala. Welcome, welcome. Well, we are absolutely privileged and honored to have, as I said, two of our great ocean leaders here this morning at Capitol Hill Ocean Week. And honestly, this has been a week of urgent calls to action, but also tremendous progress. And so I'd like to start our conversation by asking you, Dr. Spinrad, with this incredible week of announcements full of news from the Biden-Harris administration, and of course NOAA and beyond, if you could maybe share a little bit of an overview of some of these incredible actions that have taken place and give us that perspective of how you feel they're going to make a difference.
Great, thank you, Joel. And let me start first by congratulating you and the Foundation for a wonderful Capitol Hill Ocean Week. I think this has been seminal in terms of some of the discussions. I had the opportunity to sit in on the youth sessions yesterday, and we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that. As you heard, we were delighted to roll out the 16th sanctuary in the National Marine Sanctuary System yesterday, Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary. But wait, there's more. There's more announcements that are coming out. In fact, this week we will be announcing the Marine Economy Satellite Account. That sounds a little geekish, but what it is it's a reflection. It's a very robust, scientifically validated demonstration of the growth in the marine economy, the blue economy, if you will. And just to give you some sense of the kind of numbers, it's a growing economy. But from 21 to 22, the marine economy saw a growth of 2%, and its contribution to GDP was 2.3% of sales, which is $770 billion and 2.4 million jobs. If you're wondering what sectors, it's ships and boat building, coastal tourism and recreation, which is particularly relevant to this audience, I think, and marine transportation. And obviously, emerging new sectors in the economy, like the offshore wind industry, which saw over $160 million in construction. So that rollout, that announcement of, we call it the MESA, the Marine Economy Satellite Account, is a really important reference point, I think, for everything we are doing in the context of economic stability, economic development. The other thing I'm excited to announce here is that we will be signing a memorandum of understanding between NOAA and the Department of Energy on the critical issue of marine carbon dioxide removal, a subject that's gotten a lot of attention of late and really is a critical part of our attention to the Paris Agreement, our ability to reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We're going to take advantage of the best aspects of expertise that we in NOAA have in bringing marine science to the table, and of course our colleagues at Department of Engineering, Department of Energy rather, in terms of understanding carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the economics and science associated with CDR, carbon dioxide removal. So those are a couple examples of the kinds of announcements that we are rolling out this week in consonance with CHOW.
That's brilliant, and thank you for sharing that incredible news. It's so vital, obviously, that we begin to address these fossil fuels and creating a stronger and more resilient economy. I think when you and I first met, we were actually in Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and we were discussing how all of the economic benefits that come along with conservation, the importance of a sustainable economy and good jobs, and frankly, how maybe we're all kind of in the climate business now, right? And we've got to address those challenges. So these are exciting announcements, and we appreciate you sharing them with us. Dr. Sala, as I mentioned in the opening, we were able to honor National Geographic Pristine Seas last night, or the night before, with a Conservation Innovation Award. And the innovation part is kind of critical here. I would love to ask you to share a little bit more about your thoughts. What is the innovation maybe at the heart of Pristine Seas?
Yeah, I was wondering why you gave us that word. No, thank you so much again for this very kind recognition and the wonderful gala you put together. The other two awardees were absolutely fantastic. And, you know, I think that we have put the innovation back into the ocean, I think, because what we do is to work with communities and governments to protect vital places in the ocean, basically removing extractive and damaging activities. So marine life has this extraordinary ability to bounce back in a way that we can never engineer, right? We can never restore ecosystems the way the ocean does it on itself. So it is the ocean that innovates through ecological succession, through evolution. But something that we have done was, when I was in academia, before becoming a National Geographic explorer, I thought that information and data was all we needed for decision makers to make informed decisions about the world, right? I was a little naive about that. And we realized very quickly that you can have all the data in the world, you can have all the economics, but unless there is an emotional connection with the ocean, it's going to be much more difficult to take action. So something that we have been able to do, because we carry these expeditions to these wonderful places, is to take leaders with us. We've taken presidents, prime ministers, ministers, local chiefs, elders of islands, and we take them either diving with us on our submersible, and you take them down 400 meters, 200 meters, and they see a world that they never imagined. They come out of the water even more in love with the places where they were born, discovering a new dimension, and that's magic, right? And it is then, once we see that magic happen, when the leaders and the local communities fall in love with parts of their heritage that they didn't know about, that then we come with the science and the economics, and then showing the benefits to everybody of protecting key areas so they can benefit the benefits around them or in them. That's I think where we were able to innovate in our humble way.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It all comes back to that initial connection with the ocean and with our waters, wherever that may be, for whatever experience that might happen. I know for myself personally, it started where I learned to swim was in a hotel swimming pool, but then eventually I was in the Great Lake, in Lake Erie, where I grew up, and then when I moved to New Jersey on the Atlantic Ocean, it suddenly dawned on me. It was like the light bulb went off. This is very special. This is home. This needs to be protected. So I appreciate the idea that leadership and connecting leaders of all walks of life to that heart moment with the ocean can be a powerful force of change in combination with stimulating this blue economy and bringing those two forces to bear. And honestly, it takes leadership. So Dr. Spinrad, leadership is a theme here at Capitol Hill Ocean Week this year. And I would love to get a sense for you, if you have in mind any particular centers of excellence around leadership at this particular moment in the work you're doing, and where you think that can advance us.
So I firmly believe that leadership comes almost at every level and in every sector. And so what I've been looking at in terms of our activity is that we're dealing with a variety of different kinds of communities, and each one of them demonstrates a leadership element. And I couldn't agree more with Enrique's invoking the human element in terms of trying to get things done. So we're dealing with cooperative communities, communities that are engaged and are being impacted by the consequences of climate change, whether that be a tribal community in Alaska along the coastline or a fishing community in the Gulf Coast, working with communities that have issues that they need to attend to is one area for leadership. Another is those communities that are most vulnerable. So they may not know or understand the science associated with being more resilient to climate change, but they are the ones that have to define the requirements. They are the ones who have to define the need for conservation. So we work very heavily with leaders in engaged communities around sanctuary development, which is why the sanctuary designation process is a relatively long, deliberative process, engaging with them. The other area where I see a lot of leadership is in the communities of activism. And in fact, we will be signing an agreement with the Aquarium Conservation Partnership as another example of a leadership group. There are many similar groups, and I've got to say, we're also signing an agreement with Earth Echo, a youth leadership group.
That's fantastic.
I hope we have a chance to talk a little bit more about youth and youth leadership, but I would say it's around different types of communities where we find the leadership.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is definitely community-driven, and we really have been focusing on centering people really at the heart of all of the work that we do, and elevating and amplifying those voices. Obviously, these impacts of climate change are very real. Here in DC and in the surrounding area, last night we had a series of storms. There was a tornado just a little bit north of us.
As forecast.
As forecast. Well, there was a tornado, right? And then, but hey, there was also a tornado in Detroit, Michigan last night. You know, the world, I think we all see the world is changing around us. And I guess this question is maybe for Dr. Sala. You know, the impact of climate change is here. And what role, how do you communicate that through the media that Pristine Seas also creates while you're out there on exploration? What's that message?
Yeah, I don't think, well, I make the same mistake every morning. I read the news, and it's so depressing. I don't think we need to add to it. There are enough horrible stories about the extreme weather events, floods, sea level rise, flooding islands, droughts. We're expecting a stronger hurricane season this year as well, thanks to NOAA's work. So it's just, I don't think we need to add to that. What we want to do with our media is to show what's possible. Right? And there is this example of climate resilience that I love, which is the best evidence we have of how protection can actually foster resilience to climate, to global warming. There is this place, the Southern Line Islands in Kiribati, 5 uninhabited islands between the equator and French Polynesia. This is the first place we went to when we started Pristine Seas. That was the first place in my list. 5 uninhabited remote islands. Those coral reefs are probably pristine. We went there and oh my God, it was just sharks everywhere. The abundance of fish off the charts. 80% of the bottom was covered by thriving coral. It was paradise. We worked with the government of Kiribati to create a no-take marine reserve 12 miles around every one of the islands. And we thought, wow, this place is safe right now. But in 2015-16, there was the strongest El Nino warming event ever that killed half of the corals in the most pristine coral archipelago on the planet. And we thought, wow, you know, even the most pristine places are not going to survive. But you know, we know that the more biodiversity there is, the more resilience there is. So we came back 5 years later, and I remember I was so afraid before getting in the water because I didn't know if half of the corals would be dead or even more. And I jumped in the water, and as soon as my bubbles clear, I asked myself, was there any bleaching here ever? The reef had completely recovered. Why? Partly, in great part, because of the extraordinary abundance of fish, especially the big parrotfish, schools of hundreds of surgeonfishes, that basically with their activity they keep the reef clean and allow the corals to recover. In the Caribbean that cannot happen because those fish are gone, they've been fished out. So the seaweed overgrow the dead corals and that's it. And now the average coral cover in the Caribbean is less than 10%. These places went back to 80%, right? So that's, and we have a film, Super Reefs, now it was on National Geographic Channel, now it's on Hulu. There is also a 15-minute short on YouTube, Super Reefs, where we tell that story of hope, that with the right level of protection in the right places, we can actually buy time while we reduce emissions and slow down the warming of the ocean.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that powerful story. So Super Reefs is the film, and it's currently on Hulu, so we should take a look at that. And you know, I'm inspired every day. I'm on social media and all this stuff, and I'm following all of these accounts of young people around the world. And you know, we just announced the global coral bleaching event in April that's impacting, you know, the entirety of the world. It's so inspiring to see all these youth voices around the world, from Australia to the Pacific Remote Islands across the United States, responding to that, talking about the stories of coral reefs in their communities and their backyard and what they're doing to protect it. And so I know media plays a very powerful role, but you know, young people in particular, they are our future, this next generation, if you will, of leaders. They're listening to us now. thinking about their own strategies and tactics. And I'm curious, and this is going to be a question, our last question for both of you, how can we engage with this next generation of ocean leaders? And at this particular moment, what message should we share that imparts perhaps some lessons that we have learned in our generation that we hope that live on?
Do you want to start?
I'll go very short.
Sure.
Because you probably have a better answer than me. And you know, we have Earth Echo here. We also Sustainable Ocean Alliance, all these amazing young people with this energy. And if I had to go back to my younger self, I would say push harder. So that's what I would tell these young people, push harder. Because we need to be reminded that we need to do even more of what we're doing. So thank you for what you're doing, the young people in the ocean conservation community, but even push even harder, please.
I'll start with the end and work backwards.
Sure.
And the end is, what's your advice? That's my question to the youth. What is your advice to us? I can proudly tell you, I'm actually the oldest NOAA administrator we've ever had. And I came into this field because of a teacher when I was in the 8th grade. And I realized at that point that I had thoughts, I had perspectives, I didn't have a lot of knowledge. Since then, I was in the 8th grade only about 10 years ago. Since then, I've learned that the voice of youth is well-informed, well-organized, and passionate. And so what I want to try to do, and we're doing this at NOAA through a program we call the Young Changemakers Fellowship, and you'll have a chance to hear from one of our young changemakers shortly, is actually give a seat at the table where major policy is being discussed, where budgets are being developed. We have to do that. It's not a question of, well, what would we lose by doing that? It's what are we not getting by not having that voice at the table. So I firmly believe every single person in a leadership position, including my peers in federal agencies, should literally set up a seat at the table for a youth voice as we are developing policy, strategy, and budgets.
Oh my God, yes. Well, I know there's some people in this room who would be interested in that chair. So listen, I want to thank our distinguished guests here. This has been a phenomenal opening conversation for CHOW, day number 2. Thank you, Dr. Spinrad, and thank you to NOAA for making your appearance possible. Thank you, Dr. Sala, and the National Geographic organization. Congratulations again for your Conservation Award for Pristine Seas. And then the audience, let's please thank our guests. So, one quick note, Dr. Sala will be signing copies of his latest book, The Nature of Nature, at the National Geographic booth outside right after this session from 10:30 to 11:30. So thank you again, and please, again, one more round of applause for our guests. Thank you. We'll do a quick photo up here. Well, you just heard a couple of really exciting announcements from NOAA. We're looking forward to seeing what comes out of those agreements, both with Earth Echo, and we'll see hopefully some storytelling, perhaps some exciting media emerge from Pristine Seas in the future that might capture some of that energy. So thank you all for joining me for that incredible conversation with Dr. Sala. And also with Dr. Spinrad. It truly was remarkable. Okay, so we're jumping right in this morning, as you can see, and I think the vision for the future, what can that look like as we all bring our own brand of leadership to bear on the health of the ocean, the seas, the Great Lakes? I've heard some of the conversations that are happening after the day of activities yesterday. I got a chance to meet with many of you in the halls here at Capital Ocean Week. Made a lot of new contacts. I watched you all connecting with each other, and I hope that you'll continue to do that, whether it's virtually and online by participating in those sessions or also in person here. key to all of this is understanding that the ocean is not a static place. Our next panel, Living Laboratories, Accelerating Ocean Conservation and the Blue Economy, is going to dive into the biodiversity and eDNA opportunities and its potential to revolutionize ocean decision-making and to reduce some of these trade-offs that we're making between solutions around species, climate, and human needs. So already this week has been packed with events across Washington, D.C., focusing on the ocean. And earlier this week, we had the opportunity to experience the 3rd annual eDNA workshop hosted by Johns Hopkins University's Applied Physics Lab in cooperation with the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, which included the very formal launch of the Federal National Marine eDNA Strategy. So when we say World Ocean Week, World Ocean Month, Capitol Hill Ocean Week is an opportunity and a venue to advance dialogue, we don't usually mean that it happens on the very next day, but it happens. So now this discussion you're going to hear today from our panelists is fresh on the heels of that workshop, so they've got a lot to share with you. A special thank you to OceanKind for their sponsorship of this session. And for opening remarks, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Elif Demir-Hilton. She is an advisor for OceanKind and currently serves as the co-chair of the Marine Technology Society eDNA Committee, where she promotes collaboration among professionals, researchers, and policymakers. Her previous work integrated traditional oceanographic methods with molecular analytical tools, and she has a great deal of experience developing and deploying novel robotic devices for marine eDNA and applications. Please welcome Dr. Demir-Hilton.
It's been an incredible week for our oceans, beginning with the announcement of all 3 national strategies. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say a big thank you to Honorable Jane Lubchenco for her leadership, the federal teams who guided and panned these strategies, and non-federal teams whose work underpins our progress in policy, technology, and science. The momentum of these initiatives strengthens our collective efforts to safeguard our oceans and their diverse life. One of the remarkable events, as Joel mentioned, earlier this week was the 3rd eDNA workshop. The workshop was marked by a deep sense of engagement as we explored implementing the strategy unveiled just on Monday. The dedication from this community continues to underscore our shared commitment to preserving some of our planet's most valuable assets, its biodiversity. I'm very excited to hear from the panelists today who bring their esteemed expertise in weaving these strategies into the big picture. All these events have been a careful consideration into this panel, so I want to take a moment to thank the amazing team who made this all possible. Joel, Shannon, and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation team, whose efforts, dedication, and enthusiasm have brought this event to life. From the initial brainstorming sessions to the thoughtful design of this panel, you've all worked very tirelessly to ensure meaningful and engaging experience for everyone. I know we didn't make this an easy task by asking you to align this event with the eDNA workshop just earlier this week and the national strategies announced only on Monday. Your ability to navigate through all of the moving pieces thoughtfully, engage all the groups involved has been incredible. You've created an environment that's both welcoming and stimulating, bringing people together in a way that only you could. So let's give a big round of applause to Joel, Shannon, and the National Marine Sanctuary. Enjoy the event.
So our panelists this morning are going to discuss these two incredible new national policies on marine biodiversity, shining a light on the importance of the interconnectedness of life in our seas with scientific advancements. And as you know, we look to leaders from all sectors and geographies here to build partnerships that are going to propel these strategies into action. So it's only fitting that we have a moderator for this session who is an absolute expert in building partnerships and finding the shared mission of accelerated ocean conservation and the blue economy. I am deeply honored to introduce Dr. Jane Lubchenco, Deputy Director for Climate and Environment at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Dr. Lubchenco leads a stellar team that uses knowledge and innovation to help build and achieve America's aspirations for a healthy environment, stable climate, and prosperous, equitable, secure communities. Her team works on climate change, biodiversity, the ocean, the polar regions, indigenous knowledges, and those intersections. So please welcome to the stage Dr. Jane Lubchenco and our panelists.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are just delighted to be here with all of you here in the room, everyone online. Thank you to Joel and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for providing this incredible opportunity for the gathering of ocean champions. It's so exciting to see all the amazing things that are underway. But this particular gathering is important for many reasons. It provides an opportunity for us to shine a spotlight on the importance of science and innovation and discovery. It provides an opportunity for people to come together and talk about what are the threats, how can we move forward together. But every year increasingly, and this year in particular, it's highlighting the importance of young ocean champions and providing an opportunity to empower and lift them up. And so I really congratulate the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for using CHOW to really empower the future, which is really what our young folks are about. So a shout out to all those young people who are here, and thank you to them for the key role that they are playing in all of these sessions. We are here to have a fun conversation. There's so much that's going on in this space. But this particular session is focused on technology, innovation, and discovery. And the through line of that is bold leadership. And we are seeing bold leaders here on the stage. We are seeing bold leaders across the administration. We're seeing bold leaders in industry, in the private sector, in civil society, in philanthropy, and all of that comes here together at CHOW. I think you're in for a treat with this panel. These are really, really terrific people. Before we get started with the first part of our conversation, I'm going to set the stage with a few opening remarks. Effective ocean conservation and sustainable ocean management really require that we have responsible deployment of technology, that we have broad sharing of actionable data and information, and strong, effective collaborations across sectors. Bold leadership makes all of that happen. President Biden set the tone for a lot of the things that we're talking about today, the things that we're rolling out this week, and the things that we are implementing from what we have announced previously. He has really jump-started the action with historic commitments and action in the climate and ocean space. And I can't tell you how important it is to have that leadership at the top, the challenging of everyone to go big, go bold, be ambitious, but also to deliver for the American people. We've seen the Investing in America initiative pull all of that action, that historic action together, but providing the resources through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, giving us the resources to actually achieve the bold visions that were set out. That bold vision inspires us to step up and to dive in, if we're going to use an ocean analogy. And in addition to the Ocean Climate Action Plan, the Ocean Justice Strategy, many of the other things that we have announced previously and are now in the process of actively implementing, we have exciting 3 announcements that we have rolled out this week. And I want to just highlight each of them because we're so excited about them. This week, we have really stepped up and delivered across the administration. First of the 3 bold strategies is the National Strategy for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. And this is really a vision for policy and action to support healthy, productive, and resilient ecosystems and people in a rapidly changing ocean. This strategy highlights how investing in everything from nature-based solutions to conservation to green shipping can really deliver catalytic benefits to people. It creates a pathway for us to use the ocean without using it up. The vision for that strategy is that we have sustainable, productive, healthy ocean ecosystems that, in fact, can deliver the triple bottom line of producing sustainably, protecting effectively, and prospering equitably. And that triple bottom line is really exciting, and we can do that. Biodiversity is essential for that to happen. It's essential for the resilience of ocean ecosystems, which is why this week we have also announced the National Ocean Biodiversity Strategy. This presents a high-level roadmap to expand the nation's strong foundation of ocean science by coordinating U.S. science and stewardship in support of evidence-based decision-making. The strategy also highlights how we can collect and manage, steward, deliver, and interpret timely information so that we can indeed be healthy stewards, so that we can be better stewards of a healthy ocean. And finally, the National Aquatic eDNA Strategy, for which you appropriately gave a nice round of applause, thank you, provides a pathway for more comprehensively understanding and assessing life in U.S. waters. Environmental eDNA or eDNA is genetic material that's found in the environment. And the analysis of eDNA is a very powerful tool whose time has come. And this report lays out a strategy for how we can realize that potential. So, with those 3 exciting strategies in mind, let's turn to our distinguished panel. I'm going to invite each of them to share a little reflection about some of the things that each of them is leading and championing, and invite all of you to send in questions. If we have time for those, we will certainly get to them. But Ellen, you're sitting right next to me, so I'll pick on you first. Dr. Ellen Stofan is the Undersecretary for Science and Research at the Smithsonian. She oversees the science museums, the science research centers, the Smithsonian Library and Archives, and the scholarly, the Smithsonian Scholarly Press. Ellen, you lead the Smithsonian's Life on a Sustainable Planet initiative. Really exciting, big, and bold. Tell us a little bit about what a sustainable planet means to you, and especially given your role, what is the role of science in achieving that?
So through Life on a Sustainable Planet, we're leveraging the Smithsonian's vast collections. We have 45 million specimens across all marine groups. That's just a small part of our huge collections. We have art, history, culture, and science museums. We have education programs. And we have over 500 scientists. We're marshaling all those resources, we're leveraging those resources to help create a shared future where people and nature can coexist sustainably. So this is really the central challenge of our time. We're facing incredible biodiversity loss, as you all know, and we've got the twin crises of climate change and social inequity. So I think the National Marine Biodiversity Strategy, the National eDNA Strategy are great first steps in this direction because they're really about how do we have leadership? How do we change talk into action? How do we have a path forward that has to involve partnerships? And so one of the key things we're signing an MOU today with the Ocean Foundation. I'm excited Phil's here. We're deeply participating in the National Nature Assessment. We co-chaired the National Marine eDNA Strategy, and yesterday we were really excited to announce in the next 2 years we're going to complete genome skimming of all the US fishes in our collection. So it's really about taking all the resources of the Smithsonian and saying, how do we do the science that's necessary to really tackle these giant challenges of our time? And again, it's got to be done in a way of collecting data that is open, that is transparent, that's actionable. And we have to do it in these deep partnerships, focusing on how do we work with communities, how do we ensure that every solution nature-based solution we have is one that brings equity into communities, and we really work, again, deeply in community.
Very exciting, very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Michael Weiss, you are the program officer for Marine Mammal and Biodiversity Program at the Office of Naval Research, and you co-chaired the committee that delivered the aquatic eDNA strategy. Tell us a little bit more about how you think eDNA can actually help us do a much better job of identifying, detecting, and assessing life in ocean waters. And what do you see as the role of the federal government in actually moving ahead with that?
Yeah, thank you, Jane. And definitely recognize our team effort in creating the eDNA strategy. A lot of our writing team is here, so hats off to all those folks and our co-chairs. As you said, Jane, the time is now. There's such a demand for good information, biodiversity information. We need timely and trusted information for multiple applications across multiple agencies. So when we look at traditional means of surveying across agencies for these various applications, there's some of the challenges are very labor intensive, time consuming, they can be expensive, some can be destructive to the environment or marine life, and some may provide incomplete information. I can bet in this crowd, a show of quick hands, how many people have been whale watching in this group? How many people have been whale watching and not seen anything? Right? So our traditional gold standards for going out and finding animals in the environment, like visual surveys, have issues. You don't always see whales. If you're listening, you're not always hearing things. So it's one of those key things for Navy, of course, in a lot of our monitoring. We are needing to understand the numbers of animals that are out there, particularly with marine mammals. So eDNA is a tool that has come of age. It's an exciting time because the demand is great for information, and we now have a tool that can really address a number of the critical mandates out there, and do it really in a faster, cheaper, better way. I think we can, if there's making lemonade out of lemons with the COVID pandemic, there's been tremendous investments in the industry for molecular assays, developing capacity from labs to human capacity to address that, wastewater monitoring, things like that. A lot of that we can leverage for eDNA monitoring. Of course, genetic sequencing has gotten very cheaper and cheaper. And with eDNA, it's relatively easy. You collect a bottle of water and take that microbes to whales approach. So in that bottle of water, you can detect everything from microbes to whales. So an incredible diversity of life that you can get with such a simple sample. This enables us to use a variety of platforms, from our research vessels down to small boats, autonomous platforms to do that sampling. I think we reduce any potential harm. Certainly if you're only collecting water, we're very good at detecting cryptic species. And I think critically it enables the democratization of our sampling. So in support of things like the Ocean Justice Strategy, we're enabling local communities, indigenous communities, tribal nations, and others to collect water to do their own sampling, to monitor their own aquatic ecosystems. And at the same time, eDNA, we're at an exciting place in technology development with a lot of the different samplers that are out there, that we'll be able to scale up our observations to really be able to monitor the vast oceans within the U.S. EEZ. That'll support a number of national initiatives like America the Beautiful, 30 by 30. If we want to identify and then monitor 30% of our oceans, we're going to need the tools to do that. National nature assessment we're going to hear about, and other things. If we're going to evaluate the effectiveness of MPAs, sanctuaries, things like that, again, we'll need the tools to do that. So not to say that eDNA is going to solve all the problems, but it will be a great complement to a lot of the traditional and existing applications or methods. So I think that that's certainly one aspect of it. As far as the federal government goes, I think there's definitely a lot that for us to do. I think we need to engage at the federal leadership level. We need to get buy-in from agency leadership, because we need to develop our human capacity within those labs. We need to redirect our resources to address those critical capacities, the R&D needs. We need to be responsive for local needs. As we move toward implementation, we're going to need to engage our local communities, from the states to regions, local entities, again, tribal communities, tribal nations, and not just develop the strategy, we're one and done, or I'm sorry, the implementation, we're one and done, but really engage, continuous engagement as we move forward and technology evolves. I think the federal government, we can certainly lead the trajectory for eDNA technology development and facilitate the transition from science and researchy technology and application. We can accelerate that to operations. So I think there's a number of things that we can lead.
Great. So thank you, those of you who have already submitted questions. Really exciting. I'm going to take a couple of questions from these and invite those of you who haven't yet spoken to fold that into your remarks. So we'll do this sort of in real time. So one of the challenges that has been flagged is that it's much easier to do physical and chemical observations and measurements in the ocean. How do we ensure that we have adequate biological observations? Obviously, eDNA is relevant to that, but there may be other opportunities. How do we scale a lot of what we are doing? And it's all well and good to have a couple of really good efforts, but the magnitude of the challenges is immense. And so how do we scale these things, whether it's measurements or innovation or whatever? How can we make sure that some of these new tools like eDNA be in the hands of people who are actually on the water, like fishermen? And how can that help us achieve sustainable fisheries? And how do we make sure that all these strategies that are being announced are actually implemented and funded? So, okay, Julie, I'm going to pick on you next. So Dr. Julie Pullen is a climate scientist, and she's co-founder of Propeller Ventures, which is a firm that invests in early-stage ocean climate technology startups. Julie, let's focus on ocean observations and monitoring, because that really is key to underpinning a lot of the action that we care about. How does your work advance the production of reliable and actionable data, and why do you think that's so important?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here to share some observations from my post of vantage now in the private sector. Our fund is now almost a year and a half old. It's a venture capital fund focused on ocean climate solutions with a particular inclination towards deep tech and science solutions. And we invest across the blue economy. We have a founding partnership with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and expanded partnerships including Scripps, Oregon State University, University of Hawaii, and University of Rhode Island. It's a tremendously gratifying activity to work with ocean scientists and help them deliver solutions out into the real world using the catalyzing capital of venture. In terms of the observational landscape, what I'm seeing is solutions that can recognize the distributed nature of observational needs and the integration and coherent synthesis of different sources of observations. So specifically thinking about the biology one that you mentioned, the undersampling relative to the physical and chemical constituents. eDNA is an incredible advent for the whole community, and imagine configuring that and integrating the synthesis of that with acoustic signatures of life on our planet, with visual signals of life. And so when you start thinking about these different modalities and ways of sensing, including satellite, and the ability to infer more by the integration of those, I think there's a lot of power in that. And then there's particular drivers within the private sector, and I'd like to draw your attention to a few of those. Among companies, there has been a growing emphasis on reporting out the climate risks and the emissions associated with their activities. The Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, or TCFD, has been very successful in getting companies to pay attention to these things, report on them, recognize their risks, and mitigate those, including emissions reductions. Following on that same template of reporting, we now have the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, or TNFD, which encourages companies to scrutinize their dependencies on nature, including ocean and biodiversity, and looking at ways to mitigate those risks and also opportunities for them to contribute to the sustainment of biodiversity on our planet. These are really powerful signals in the corporate arena, and I think will drive even more mechanisms of valuing biodiversity and valuing the underlying data as well. Now, whether that takes the form of biocredits or the sort of functional processes of life on our planet, including carbon sequestration, Rick Spenrad mentioned marine CDR, the monitoring, reporting, and verification associated with those processes, whether it takes the form of carbon credits, but the synthesis of this information is very powerful in the moment that we find ourselves in, and the commitment across sectors and arenas, including philanthropy, government, and private sector, has never been more powerful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Julie. Paul, let's turn to you. Dr. Paul Bunge is the co-founder and president of Conservation X Labs. And part of Conservation X Labs' modus of operation is to sort of be a disruptor in the field of conservation. Tell us how you think about that and how you think about innovation and scaling.
That's a very small question. Thank you, Jane.
Of course, of course.
Well, as Ellen noted, we're all sort of aware of the biodiversity crisis and the loss, but I think it's probably worth being really honest with ourselves about the scope and scale of the crisis and just where we're at in reality. And 50 plus years on from the first Earth Day and most of our seminal legislation in the United States, for example, and things like this, when you go and actually measure the health of populations of various species, of ecological process and such, we're continuing to see meaningful declines almost across the board. So despite all of the efforts of conservation and more, we're still not reaching the pace of the problem. And if you just compare the sort of exponential increase in biodiversity loss to the sorts of solutions that we have at hand, which tend to be fairly incremental, quite honestly. They don't scale typically as well as they need to. The gap between those two widens, and the problem just gets worse. And so I think to be honest, what we have to do is rethink the way we perform these activities, and you've already heard some remarkable ideas, to bring in things like scalable technologies, to bring in things like the private sector, and to bring and broaden and democratize the notion of conservation itself. And just so those three things, if you take the opportunity that we have right now with various technologies to actually make the efforts of conservation even just barely sufficient, is finally in our grasp, right? It's estimated that global conservation efforts only have about 10% of the dollars that are needed in any given year to achieve their goals. It's actually much worse in marine conservation. Most of that goes to terrestrial efforts. But when we can bring in some of these extremely scalable technologies like eDNA, like AI and machine learning, like sensorizing efforts, especially things like acoustics and such, these actually have the potential to 100x, 1000x our efforts from a cost basis relative to this. So that technology, bringing those sorts of things in, actually gives us an opportunity to start bridging this gap. But we also have to think about how what we're doing is actually resulting in meaningful biodiversity gains or nature positive gains. And as critical as the efforts of folks like the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and sanctuaries are, we're still not taking all of the pressures off of these natural places that are driving so much of our ecological destruction and biodiversity loss. So when you can find garbage at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, and when agricultural effluent and pollution is seeping into reefs that may well be protected, we know that the actual drivers of this loss typically are not happening where we are trying to protect, the big drivers. And so that means actually starting to internalize some of the thoughts about where those drivers occur and how we might shift those economic activities. Like, very often it's on land, quite honestly. It's what we as humans, a terrestrial species, are doing that has these sorts of impacts on the marine environment. And so starting to rethink the way we do conservation to focus on those underlying drivers, those things that are part of our actual economic activities, and internalizing them, then using technologies. We can rethink how it is that we feed aquaculture fish and move away from wild-caught fish to feed farmed fish by creating things like plant-based feeds, or there are even efforts to turn carbon dioxide into fish feed, for example. There's ways that we can rethink taking pressures off of those off of fisheries, for example, by expanding the use of lab-grown meats or proteins and the like, which is critical, of course, as demand continues to increase. But all of that, I think, pales in comparison to the thing that I think is really exciting about when we say disrupting conservation, because this is actually happening writ large, which is, and you kind of hit on this, Mike, with the notion of democratizing our use of tools. I really see it as democratizing who is a conservationist. When we see efforts like TNFD that Julie mentioned that are putting corporate leaders right at the heart of changing their behaviors and influencing how biodiversity protection works, we're starting to see what I mean by disrupting who conservation is. It means bringing in corporate leaders, technologists, artists, storytellers. It means not just I love biologists, I'm one myself, but how it is that our company now, I think our largest sector of employees are computer scientists and machine learning writers, which is incredible. None of whom were trained in biology or conservation, but are applying their skills in a way that is really, really transformative to some of these things. And it also means what we heard from folks like Dr. Sala and Dr. Spinrad about bringing in the youth, bringing in local communities, indigenous groups, making sure that we're actually representing conservation and empowering everyone to be a conservationist in a way that and again, that could happen on land if we're able to take those pressures off of the sea itself. And I think that gives me a lot of hope that we're already seeing those kinds of transformations happening. We just need to accelerate them even quicker.
Thank you, Paul. I'm reminded of the, this is a segue to Phil, so hang on just a sec. So I'm reminded of, the America the Beautiful initiative, which is really focused on protecting and conserving 30% of the ocean, of the lands and the ocean by 2030. And as we move toward and aspire to achieve that, you're shining a spotlight on the importance of the other 70% so that we have a 100% solution. It's not just a 30% solution. And what happens in that 70%, whether it's in the ocean or on land, is critically important. So understanding the drivers of that loss is critically important. And that's actually a perfect segue to Dr. Philip Levin, who is the director of the first ever National Nature Assessment. Yay, we're gonna have a National Nature Assessment, very exciting. And Phil, a lot of what we've been talking about is science and technology and innovation and all these cool new tools, but recognizing the importance of other ways of knowing. How is the NNA thinking about all of that, about these scaling issues, about this democratization, but also embracing the multiple ways of knowing that can help us identify the path forward and democratize the solutions that we need?
Thank you for that, Jane. And I just have to start by saying it's really an honor, and I'm humbled just to be on the stage with everybody. It's really incredible just to hear what people are saying. I'm excited about your question because I'm really excited about the nature assessment. So our goal is to assess the status, trends, and future projections of lands, waters, wildlife, ecosystems, and importantly, the benefits they provide to people. And so we simply cannot do that without engaging all forms of knowledge. eDNA is gonna be incredibly important. I mean, eDNA is gonna pick up twice as many species as we do with conventional methods. So understanding the importance of diversity to human well-being will be really enhanced by eDNA, and understanding what's out there will be enhanced by eDNA, but it's not enough. We need to engage indigenous knowledge holders with free, prior, informed consent. There's so much knowledge out there that can help us understand the processes that are supporting our life system. But it's more than just sort of information, I think, especially in the early stages of the NNA. Indigenous knowledge in particular is helping us change the sort of questions that we ask, and especially, I think, opens our minds to different sort of worldviews. Let me give one example, and that's in health. So we have a chapter in the nature assessment that focuses on the relationship of nature and health. And when one thinks of health, you could think of, well, physical and mental health, for example, and changes in asthma or rates of depression. We have been lucky enough to learn from the Swinomish tribe in Washington through an NIH-funded project where they developed something called Indigenous Health Indicators. And so it's a different, broader view of what health is. And so when we think about how do changes in nature impact health, this different way of knowing, this different worldview really changes the fundamental questions we ask. Yes, we are still concerned about mental health and physical health, but it's inclusive of things like the ability to transfer knowledge to generations. And so when there are HABs that harm clams that the tribe depends on, it doesn't just mean that there's some physical risk. There's a foundational cultural risk and even risks around treaty rights. I'll stop there. Because I'm watching the clock.
So we've touched on a number of really important themes: democratization, 100% solutions, scaling. I want to invite each of you to do one last reflection. So this is a lightning round, so 1 minute each, to choose one of those that you are particularly passionate about, or add any of the other things that you really want to get in and share with this audience. It might be public engagement, it might be opportunities for young people, it might be working with communities, citizen science, whatever. But let's focus on how do we build on the strategies that have been released, the 3 this week, but others before that. How do we actually accelerate the pace of their being successful so that we end up with the kind of healthy, productive ocean ecosystems and healthy communities and economies that we need, that depend on the biodiversity, that depend on indigenous knowledge, that depend on the observations, the science and technology that we're talking about? How can we really meet the moment by accelerating the progress? So, Julie, I'm going to start with you. We'll come back this way. You're up.
Yeah, your question for me brings to mind really this moment we find ourselves in with tremendous ability to measure the flows and fluxes associated with a range of different parameters and the creatures. And so, examples of how technology can move us forward in this regard, and how startups, we're a venture capital fund focused on pre-seed and seed, so very early investments, can take one particular realm and then start expanding the modalities beyond there. So I think of one of our portfolio companies, Coastal Carbon, who uses satellite measurements with AI to be able to assess biomass for seaweed farms. So that helps them time the cultivation, the harvesting of seaweed based on the mass that's accumulated underneath the surface of the water. We start thinking about how the biomass signatures and fluxes and flows can be expanded further to give more signs and signatures of other activities in the ocean. I think about the WE Technologies. We have a portfolio company who's looking at how do you do reagent-free eDNA, so you don't have to take a sample back to the lab, you do it on chip in situ. And all of these types of technologies, when you think about the convergence and what that represents for that distributed monitoring that I mentioned earlier, and bringing them to bear in terms of contextual efforts like Woods Hole's Ocean Vital Signs Network, and in Canada, the North Atlantic Carbon Observatory. These are very powerful focusing efforts.
Thank you. Phil.
So the environmental writer David Orr said, hope is a verb. And I think for me, the National Nature Assessment is hope. Because what it means is rolling up our sleeves, leaning in to do the things that we need to do to make our world a better place. And so what I would leave with you is there's lots of opportunities for you to hope, to lean into the National Nature Assessment. Look at what we're doing. Engage. There will be over the summer and into the fall, and then moving forward throughout the whole process, opportunities to engage. And I would submit to you that by doing so, by looking at what we're doing, thinking about it, commenting on it, we will read those. That is an act of hope that will make this world a place that's better for nature and people.
I like the hope. I'm going to pick up on the scaling notion because I have hope because of the tools we have for scaling. And actually, I'm going to put a quick plug in. My co-founder, Alex Dagan, and a former colleague, Cassie Hoffman, wrote the first paper on scaling in conservation, because it's a really critical notion of how it is that we move from just observing to solving. And I'll pull out 3 themes that I think are really important. The first I mentioned already, technologies. There are exponential technologies from AI to robotics to solar photovoltaics, et cetera, that are actually empowering a lot of this work on a tremendous way. The second is profit, is markets, right? There's very few tools as effective at taking a solution and scaling it globally than utilizing these. And we have lots of tools from venture capital to entrepreneurship models that will actually enable us to get solutions to scale by capitalizing on people's need to grow their personal or local economy. And the third are a suite of exponential tools that we have in our kitty that really capitalize on people, on networks. And a network is one of the most powerful sort of exponential growing thing, right? You talking to 2 people, they each talk to 2 people, et cetera. You can grow this. And that could be innovation models like prizes and challenges or hackathons, mass collaboration. But it also includes tools like lean startup for entrepreneurship, which is a scientific approach to entrepreneurship, design thinking that allows us to rapidly iterate and identify how solutions can be meaningful in a real individual place. The tools that we have now to actually meet the scale and scope of the problem are unprecedented, and that along with the amazing work that you're hearing all of you folks do gives me hope that we're on the right track.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me is community collaboration. You know, for eDNA, when we think about scaling, there's the technology aspect of it, but to get to the point that we hope to with implementation, with harmonized technical approaches, coordinated observations, aligned communication strategies that will result in this nationwide eDNA network, we're going to need to work together across this community, develop the collaborations, develop the public-private partnerships. It really does, you know, to borrow the phrase, take a village to build this enterprise. So I think we really need to unite scientific inquiry. So across the science community, we need entrepreneurial enterprising, philanthropic endeavors. We need all of that to push and achieve the vision of the aquatic eDNA strategy. And then the last push, coming from a basic research agency, we do need continued R&D and develop the tools and the capabilities. eDNA is here and now for many applications, but we want more, right? We always want to do more, and there's some key developments down the road that I think that we can achieve as well.
Thank you. Ellen?
You know, clearly this issue of hope, I think, is really important. And so we did a survey of teachers internationally in the US, and what we heard back was teachers don't feel they have the time, the resources, or the expertise compared to their international counterparts to be teaching about sustainability. We need to help fix that. We're doing that with our science curricula for the global goals. We need to inspire the public. So whether it's the Sant Ocean Hall or Gunther the seal at the National Zoo, we need to connect people to nature, and we need to give them hope. We need to show there are solutions, whether it's working in urban estuaries that we do, reintroducing species out in the Montana prairie. There are solutions out there, and we all need to be working to communicate those solutions. What we're hearing back from young people is they feel a lack of hope, and it's all of our job to instill that. And then finally, I'm just going to briefly touch on the democratization of data. We have to have open, transparent data and methodologies. We've seen what's happened in the green carbon markets when you don't have trustworthy, basic, open data underlying some of these measures. We've got to focus on that.
You have heard a lot of ideas, a lot of inspiration, a lot of really exciting things that are going on. And I think the message to all of you is not only to dig into the reports that we've released, think about all of the exciting ideas that you've heard about today here, but also spend time with your family, friends, young people, old people, in nature and in the ocean. So get out in the water and reconnect to nature, because that's what's going to keep us going and keep inspiring us. We are at time. Thank you all. Stay seated, please. We have one more person who's going to do a wrap-up for us, so let us do a picture first. Give us a little bit of grace here as we do logistics, and thank you.
Stay. Okay. All right. Okay, folks. That was a very exciting discussion, and I want to echo the idea that the author David Orr said, hope is a verb, and you heard incredible solutions here. I know that we are testing eDNA right now as solutions in national marine sanctuaries, from the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary to Channel Islands, and there's such exciting opportunities that are emerging. So let me take a moment to introduce someone who will provide some closing remarks on this august panel here. Jillian Stanton is one of the first ever NOAA EE Blue Young Changemaker Fellows. For her fellowship project this year, she created the Armadillo Project, a digital resource designed to help young Texans connect with their environment and learn more about a changing planet. She has worked with local organizations, including the faith-based communities and school groups, using innovative tools and science communication to share her project's messages and resources, with the goal of combating increased climate misinformation and encouraging youth participation in conservation efforts. So please join me in providing a warm welcome to Jillian for closing remarks.
Good morning, y'all. I want to thank you so much for having me, and I'm really honored to follow this incredible group of leaders. Today, I am here, as Joel said, as a member of the inaugural class of NOAA Young Changemakers Fellows, a year-long fellowship program designed for high school students in which we've been giving funding and mentorship in order to develop a project in our local communities. As a native and proud Texan, I've spent my year developing a digital environmental education resource and climate literacy programming to help other students understand and connect with our changing world, involving everything from holding discussions about NOAA's climate report to working with local libraries to encourage reading about our planet. To me, advancing our current marine technology is not only crucial to exploration, but also education. Things like eDNA exploration and underwater robots get youth excited about science and inspire the next generation of CHOW panelists to begin their fascinations with the ocean. No offense to anyone in this room, but most kids have little to no interest in lengthy marine policies and big agreements, but instead favor hearing about the cutting-edge technology being used by scientists around the globe. And I think our leadership could learn a lot from the younger generation in terms of adaptability and interest in the new, whether that's an idea, a product, or a way of doing things. I believe that a reluctance by older leaders to disregard or ignore emerging concepts reveals the refusal to accept the responsibilities of modern leadership, one of those being acknowledging that we live in a perpetually changing world, and thus our institutions must adapt to reflect the curiosities and creations of our society. However, this conference has given me hope that a new generation of leadership and innovation is coming, one that reflects the technological creativity and ingenuity of our digital age while still providing imaginative solutions for the damage we have done to our planet. In order to solve our impending crisis and save our marine friends, it's imperative that youth voices like mine are involved in all sectors of environmental decision-making, from federal policy to economy to research at all levels. Cultivating a societal respect for our waterways is impossible without environmental education initiatives teaching all people to appreciate diverse, beautiful marine and freshwater ecosystems, thus inspiring action to protect these habitats. I think that inviting youth to collaborate with our leaders, as I've had the opportunity to do with Dr. Spinrad and other NOAA leaders through this fellowship, is truly how we will advance ocean conservation and rehabilitation. I think I speak for all young people in the audience when I say that if there's any group of people who have the energy and dedication to waterway restoration, it's the people who will likely be on this planet for the next 70, 80 years, and thus are forced to accept that we may suffer worsened effects of climate change and severe consequences for our culture of overconsumption. I think that the unique perspective youth bring to the table will result in a more collaborative, action-oriented world, and I'm excited to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oops, glasses. Thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. Lost my, there we go. All right, I've got it. Yep, all set. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to let you all go out and take a break. Thank you very much for staying with us this morning. I want to thank Jillian, and I want to thank OceanKind, our sponsor, for this incredible panel. Dr. Lubchenco, it was just a phenomenal discussion of the progress that we need to make on the solutions that we need. So just as a quick reminder, for a limited time, Dr. Sala will be signing books. His latest book, The Nature of Nature, at the National Geographic booth, which is, of course, right next to the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation booth. So take a visit. And we'll see you all back here at 11 a.m. for Leaders at the Helm of Climate-Ready Fisheries. Thank you.